Jin was an ordinary, ugly loser who became lonely after transferring into a school for animals. However, everything changes when he starts a cooking club with beast baddies, but they only want to eat his sausage every day. This story begins in Seton Academy, a school where all kinds of animals come together to study. During the entrance ceremony for new students, Jin suddenly gets slammed with a pineapple and angrily throws it away, but it hits Renka, a wolf girl who immediately attacks him, making him even more annoyed. Much later, he finds a nice spot to eat lunch, but Renka is also there, and she becomes aggressive, thinking he wants her food. Jin looks away, knowing this will make her relax, but she continues watching, so he gives her one of his meat sticks. After excitedly feasting on his meat, Renka says he can join her wolf pack, but Jin immediately declines and continues eating. Shocked, Renka starts prancing around and yapping about how cool her pack is until Jin sends the fur-brained mutt to fetch. However, just as he is about to leave, a gorgeous human baddie named Hino asks if they can sit together, melting the cells in his touch-deprived brain. He immediately says yes, and barely contains his excitement to meet another human. As Hino opens up her lunch and admits that she feels the same way, Jin gets high on ecstasy and wishes all the animals could go extinct so he can be alone with Hino. But then, Renka returns and tries to fight Hino for taking Jin away from her. He immediately tries to explain, but Hino apologizes for intruding and runs off, so Jin grabs Renka by the face, ready to send her back to the anime gods. She pulls away and reminds him that she is the pack leader, but Jin gets fed up and says he never agreed to join, before also telling her to stop yapping about having a pack when she is obviously a loner. This crushes Renka's heart, which makes Jin feel bad, so he calmly explains that she can't just form a pack with different animals. Renka refuses to believe him and narrates the time a boy risked his life to save her from a group of bears. Then, with tears in her eyes, she says she wants a pack with different animals, and he is no longer invited, before running off. Later that night, Jin is in bed, thinking about what she said because he is the boy who saved her all those years ago. However, after the bears tossed him around like a volleyball and knocked out a couple of teeth, his hatred for animals began, and Renka made it worse because she kept licking his wounds with her nasty wolf breath. The next day, Jin is back in class, hating his life until Hino shows up and takes him to a bench outside. She then tells him about her plan to start a cooking club, and as they joke about it, his delirious ecstasy returns. But of course, Renka shows up right on time to ruin all the fun. She challenges Hino again, but Jin flips out and tells her to beat it because he will never be a part of her pack. Devastated, Renka slowly crawls away, and this makes Hino feel bad, but Jin tells her not to worry about it. Much later, he is helping her carry the stuff for her cooking club when they hear laughing and see Renka dressed like a horse and carrying a bunch of stuff for a zebra chick named Mashima. As the other students continue mocking Renka, she trips, and Mashima decides to discipline her with a whip, but Hino tells her to stop and help Renka like a real friend. Mashima then tells everyone how Renka begged her to join the herd and practically agreed to become her slave. Renka admits it and says she wanted to be in a pack with Jin, but she also understands that he wants to be with a fellow human, so she decided to settle for Mashima. Upon hearing this, Mashima gets pissed and tries to beat her for choosing Jin first, but Jin stops her and continues staring with anger until Mashima fires Renka and says she is unfit to join her noble herd. When Jin asks why she is so proud, Mashima's friends explain how being a zebra makes her a better version of horses and fit to be the herd leader. However, Jin explains how zebras are actually related to donkeys, not horses. Terrified, Mashima runs over and tells him to stop spewing lies, but Jin says he can actually prove it before yanking her off the floor and exposing both her cakes and the donkey-looking tail. After some donkey dudes start blushing, Mashima gets embarrassed and runs off to hide her shame, while Renka also runs off to hide her tears from Jin. Later that day, Hino finds her and asks if they can become friends, but then 3 bears show up. Renka immediately tries up to protect her, but the bears roast her with insults and grab Hino. Thankfully, Jin finally shows up and uses pepper spray to knock them off their feet, only to get smacked into a tree seconds later. As the other bears wash their faces, the first one tries to finish Jin off, but then Renka goes Super Saiyan, only to get swatted out of the air like a meaningless insect. However, before the bear can attack again, he gets gobbled up by Kuwano, a dinosaur teacher who somehow survived extinction. After he chases the bears away, Hino checks on Jin, which makes Renka realize that she is still a loner, so she gets sad and starts leaving. Surprisingly, Jin stops her and thanks her for saving him, before asking if she wants to start a pack with them. She immediately gets excited and pounces on him before kissing him and slobbering all over his face. Hino gets horrified by this and tries to run off, but Renka pounces on her as well and proceeds to soak her face in spit to also welcome her to the pack. The next day, in the cooking club, Jin tells Renka that she has to pass a cooking test if she wants to join him and Hino. However, as soon as Renka agrees, a koala chick named Yukari appears out of nowhere and also gets excited for the test. Naturally, they all ask who on earth she is, and after she introduces herself, Jin asks why she wants to join the club because koalas only eat eucalyptus. Yukari agrees with him and says it's the only thing her family eats, despite her constant pleas to eat real food. Then, Jin and Hino figure that she just wants to try a bunch of different foods by joining the club, but Yukari says they are wrong. She is actually searching for a certain dish she once ate in the past because she loved it. When she asked her mom about it, she almost became the family dinner, so joining their club is the only way she can find the mystery dish. After they all agree to let her take the test, Yukari spends the following minutes whipping up something straight out of the chum bucket. However, when she finally serves it, they all take a bite and fall in love with the dish. This makes Jin upset because he wants to be the only one in the club with Hino. To make matters worse, Hino makes him wear an apron and asks him to help Ranka on her test, since she has no experience in a kitchen. While they both start working on Ranka's dish, Yukari asks Hino why Ranka is also joining the club. After she explains how Ranka became their pack leader, Yukari commends her for being so understanding because Ranka is obviously trying to take her man. She then reminds Hino that Jin is the only other human in school, and also says she thought they were a couple, but Hino friendzones Jin immediately. As he starts bawling his eyes out, Ranka tries to check on him, so he stops crying and realizes that Yukari is the main problem. To make sure she loses, he deludes Ranka into believing that she can actually make an amazing dish if she fills it with love. The fur-brained mutt believes him and starts making something capable of starting a new pandemic. As soon as she serves it, they all try to skedaddle, but Jin stops Yukari and says that anyone who refuses to eat one of the meals gets disqualified from the group. The next moment, Ranka tries to feed him a packed spoon of her murder meal. Naturally, he starts fighting her off while Hino films the dish for poison research purposes. On the other hand, Yukari takes a bite and recognizes it as the dish she has been searching for, but then she also remembers that she first ate it from her mother's rice cakes. Then, she explains how young koalas have to eat undigested eucalyptus from their mother's cheeks to gain the bacteria needed to process eucalyptus. As Jin tries to check on her, Ranka shows a packed spoon in his mouth, and Yukari tries to do the same to Hino. With both Ranka and Yukari passing the test, they become official club members, so Hino holds a meeting to talk about a need for veggies. Since they are all too broke to put some money together, she suggests asking the gardening club, since they are getting rid of some veggies they planted. Everyone agrees and gets shocked to see a cat girl named Kurume among them. After Yukari recognizes her as the school idol who once won Miss Female 3 years in a row, Ranka asks if she wants to join the club. Hino also welcomes her, but Kurumi declines, saying she is not interested in their little club. However, when Jin tells her to get lost, she claims she just wants to watch them and uses her cat purr to melt Yukari and Hino's brains. After they agree to let her stay, Ranka asks Jin what just happened, but he has no idea. Much later, they meet with the president of the gardening club, who then says that they can't get any veggies because someone has been stealing them. As the gang tries to figure out who the culprit is, two boars secretly continue their heist mission. Then, the club president starts interrogating Ranka like she is the thief, which makes her pissed to the point where she tells Jin that they can steal the veggies at night. After he asks about the wolf pride she usually yaps about, Kurume suddenly uses her powers to make the club president agree to her wishes. However, the thieves also fall for her charms and offer the gang some veggies, only to get chased off by the club president. Minutes later, they are all back in the club room, and while Hino and Yukari continue glazing Kurume, Jin and Ranka wonder how to get rid of her. Much later, Kurumi notices that Jin hasn't been paying her any mind, so she walks up to him and says hello by merging noses with him, which makes Ranka jealous. Then, she suggests that they all quit the cooking club and join her to spend the entire day napping, but they all refuse, which shocks Kurume. After they all explain how important the cooking club is to them, Kurumi gets frustrated and storms out while cussing them out. However, while Hino gets sad about losing a member, Jin wishes they could stay like this forever. The next day, at school, Ranka takes Jin to see Miyubi, a sloth girl who eats the moss living in her hair for lunch. As soon as Ranka says she will be their new club member, Jin tells her to forget it and turns to leave, but then Headmaster Aramoto shows up and tells them to take Miyubi back to her dorm, assuming they are friends. Jin refuses again, but after Aramoto threatens to turn him into a human fossil, he agrees, only to regret it when they wake Miyubi, who walks slower than a pregnant garden snail. Like that isn't enough, she passes out from walking too much, so Jin carries her. When they get to her room, Jin worries that they got the wrong place because of all the sports gear, but Ranka explains that Miyubi has been looking for a sport she likes. After telling her to forget about Miyubi ever playing a sport, he explains that sloths can't even eat more than a few grams of leaves every day, which means all the food in the club will just make her miserable. Him giving up on Miyubi makes Ranka upset, so she starts taking off Miyubi's plot armor and says she asked for a bath earlier. Moments later, Jin is struggling to keep his intrusive thoughts in order, but then Ranka realizes that she doesn't have soap, so she runs off to get some, leaving Jin, who then realizes that bath water is dangerous to sloths. As Miyubi starts sinking, he carries her out and completes the bath himself. Afterwards, Miyubi uses all her saved up energy to make him some tea and thank him for letting her join the club. Before he can reject her, she explains how Ranka said he was the reason she finally has friends and enjoys her time in school. After Miyubi expresses the same ecstasy to finally have friends, Ranka returns with Hino and Yukari, so Jin agrees to let Miyubi join. Then, he tells Kurumi to stop hiding, so she jumps in, and Jin also tells her to drop the nonchalant act because her tail has been on full throttle ever since she first met them. Despite this, Kurumi claims she still hates their guts and runs off, only to hook them up with a ton of veggies later that afternoon. After Hino tells Jin who is responsible, they head to the club room for the daily meal and feast, while Kurumi watches from her napping tree. Days later, at an assembly, Council President Miki tells the entire student body to get rid of anyone found having unnatural interspecies relationship, which is basically her way of expressing disgust with Jin and the girls. After the assembly, Eventually, Miki heads straight to the council office and rips her clothes off before getting swarmed by her family of mole rats. After she expresses her frustrations and reminds them that wearing clothes is embarrassing for mole rats, they praise her for being so brave. Then, Hiki asks about the investigation on the cooking club, so they tell her to sit back and watch. They started by recording Hino, but all they saw was clips of her cheeks, so they switched to Miyubi, who kept passing out every time she got the chance. On the other hand, Yukari actually invited them to hunt with her, and after catching a monster fish, she explained how her obsession with food started after she ate her mom's dookie. They then explained that they couldn't get any information on Kurume, so Miki asks about Jin and Ranka. After warning her that the footage is traumatic, they pull up a video of Ranka slobbering all over Jin. Miki collapses in shock and says that Jin is trying to start a harem with the girls. To stop him, she sends the mole rats on a mission to gather more evidence. Much later, Jin is in the club room with Hino, working on a new dish and wishing life can stay like this forever. As the rats start filming, Ranka pounces and slobbers as usual until Jin tries to rip her face apart. After she says he can't reject the pack leader, Jin says that the real boss here is Hino, so Ranka pounces on her instead. As Jin tries to stop her again, a bunch of lionesses show up, asking for Jin. As soon as he answers, they pick him up, and when Ranka tries to stop them, she gets kidnapped as well. Minutes later, they get dropped right in front of King Shishino, a lion who already mastered the art of being a harem lord. After Shishino welcomes them, Jin gets pissed since he didn't even have a choice, but then lionesses beat him up for talking back to the king. Then, the lionesses pick up Shishino as he is ready to show Jin why he sent for him. Moments later, in a bush just outside the racetrack, Shishino tells Jin to watch as an impala named Shiho shows off her incredible athleticism. While her girlfriends praise her for being so talented, Shishino tells Jin that he wants Shiho to join his harem, which is why he was summoned, because he is the first to have relations with different animals. After reminding Shishino that his kind usually eat impalas for lunch, he gets frustrated and tries to leave, but the lionesses start beating him up while Shishino continues asking for advice. Moments later, they are back in Shishino's class, with Jin looking like he just got face surgery. Jin then reminds Shishino about Miki's speech the other day, but Shishino claims his feelings for Shiho started naturally, so it shouldn't be a problem. When Jin asks how he even fell for her, Shishino narrates the day he was waiting for his girls to feed him like always. Just as the hunger intensified, he spotted Shiho leaving the field and couldn't stop drooling over her. Jin then says he is just hungry, but Shishino denies wanting to eat her, only to start drooling at the mere thought of her again. When Ranka says he has to tell Shiho about his feelings, Shishino says that he has tried multiple times, but in reality, it was mostly his girls kidnapping Shiho. This makes Jin wonder how he got a harem in the first place, so Shishino explains that it's the perk of being the strongest lion. After his girls also admit that they fell in love with his full mane, Shishino takes Jin's advice to talk to Shiho. However, every time he tries to do so, she gets terrified and runs away. After days of scaring her away, Shishino returns to his pack and describes how terrible he feels before bawling his eyes out. This makes Jin realize that he is serious about Shiho, but before he can make a suggestion, another lion shows up and challenges Shishino for his harem. Shishino accepts, but then the lion reveals Shiho and threatens to munch on her soft bones if he makes a move. With Shishino stuck in one place, a bunch of other lions start beating on him, but when the Mohawk ambassador threatens to eat Shiho again, Shishino loses it and starts pummeling his boys like flies. Then, he turns to save Shiho, but instead of attacking, he cuts off his own mane and accepts the loss of his harem. In seconds, his girls abandon him, and after getting rid of the other lions as well, Shishino apologizes to Shiho for chasing her around and says he just wanted to talk. He then turns to leave, but she stops him and asks what he wanted to talk about. After putting on his big boy pants, Shishino finally confesses his feelings, but Shiho says she can't go that far just yet since she is not in cracking season. However, she suggests starting as friends, and Shishino gladly accepts. While the lovebirds walk off to focus on their relationship, Miki hears about everything from her buddies and decides to punish Jin for spreading his animal harem fantasies to other students. She then tells the rats to summon him, but they return without him and explain how Jin hit them with a death stare for trying to interrupt his cooking time with Hino. Left with no choice, Miki puts on her uniform and heads upstairs, only to get surrounded by other students asking where she has been this entire time. After Miki manages to escape them, Kurumi shows up, so the rats tell Miki to go ahead while they sacrifice themselves for her. Moments later, Miki walks into the club room, visibly irritated, and rips her clothes off before accusing Jin of starting a harem with other animals. Jin denies it, but then Shishino shows up to offer him tips to make his harem a lot better. As Miki decides to disband their club, Hino begs her to reconsider and explains that the other girls only joined because she asked them to. Surprisingly, Miki listens to her, but says she has to kick one of the girls out to prove that they have no bad intentions. Just then, Ranka returns with the rat army, and they beg Miki to reconsider because Ranka explained how they all joined the club to have friends. After Yukari shows up with Miyubi, Ranka starts slobbering them as usual, which makes Yukari realize that they might not be so bad. However, she promises to keep watching them before heading out. Days later, the entire academy falls into chaos as all the carnivorous animals fight for who gets to claim Shishino's throne. After Jin expresses relief that the herbivores are still peaceful, Ranka gets excited to be walking with him, but he tells her to stop acting weird about it because she kept begging to walk together. She then reminds him that they are partners now, which means he has to walk her whenever she wants, but Jin tosses the leash. While she starts running laps around him, a mysterious group of carnivores watch them from the woods. Much later, in the club room, they all discuss the current battles happening between carnivores and wonder why the teachers haven't interfered. Then, the girls bring up the rumors they have heard about the battles and how the winner will get to do whatever they want in school. Jin disagrees with all this and says it's just rumors, but then Miyubi tells them about the recent attacks on carnivores around campus. For some reason, the attacker has been burying its victims in walls, and the trail of bodies shows that they are getting closer every day. When Ranka offers to protect everyone, Jin reminds her that she couldn't even take a single bear, but Ranka says she will keep training until she is as strong as her older sister. This leads Hino to ask where she is from, and after Ranka describes the freezing weather conditions of her home region, they ask how she survives, so she explains wolf biology to them. She also tells them how her older sister kept her warm with her coat, but their relationship took a bad turn when Ranka decided that she wanted to join Seton and start a pack with other animals. While they continue talking, a wolf named Kuromori watches from the hallway and tells another wolf named Feral that it really is Ranka in there. However, Feral gets nervous and wonders if Ranka will recognize her. Just as Kuromori tells her not to worry about it, she hears Jin yelling at Ranka and breaks the door down in anger. After all the wolves surround them, Jin nearly pisses himself, but then Feral grabs Ranka like a doll and starts slobbering her. As the sisters reunite, Yukari asks why Feral's head is almost touching the ceiling, and Jin reminds her that Feral always kept Ranka warm while she was exposed to the cold. This explains her unusual growth because animals living in cold regions adapt to the cold by getting larger. Upon hearing this, Feral gets emotional and says it's the first time someone has made her feel good about her height. However, after she thanks Jin, the girls remain worried because Feral pulled up with an army, which means she is probably behind all the recent attacks and also wants a shot at Shishino's throne. Thankfully, Feriel says she only came to take Ranka back home because a wolf shouldn't stay without its pack. After refusing, Ranka says she already made a pact with Jin, and they have even exchanged marriage vows. Feriel loses it immediately and grabs Jin, ready to rip him apart, but Ranka begs her to stop, which makes her realize how important Jin is to her. However, instead of releasing him, Feriel decides to also make him a member of the pack, but right before she kisses Jin, Ranka challenges her, which makes Feriel even more upset. She drops Jin and reminds Ranka that she can't go against the pack leader, but Ranka says she will hate her forever if she tries to take Jin. Those words shatter Feriel's heart and leave her traumatized, so Kuromori instructs the other wolves to retreat with her. The next day, Shishino is overlooking all the destruction happening because of his decision to pursue true love when Shiho shows up and takes him aside before saying that they can't hang out again because she wants to focus on her club. After she runs off, Shishino gets heartbroken, while a random bear gets stuffed into the wall by Feriel and her wolves. Just then, a hyena named Yena shows up and demands to know if they are responsible for all the attacks around the academy. Kuromori then explains that it's the other animals who pick fights with them, but Yena doesn't care because he is just searching for a worthy opponent. However, before he can attack, Feriel hears Ranka messing with Jin, so they all run off to hide. This makes Yena curious, so he secretly watches as Jin tells Ranka to stop slobbering his face every morning. The next moment, they get surrounded by lions, who then decide to defeat them both since they are the only ones who successfully chased off Feriel and her pack. Jin tries to explain what actually happened, but they refuse to listen. However, just as they try to attack, Yena knocks the first lion out and bodies his entire gang, while some female hyenas watch and gush over how hot he is. After telling the ladies to shut up, Yena walks over to Jin and asks why he always hides behind women instead of fighting like a real man. But then Jin says he is also a girl. Upon hearing this, the female hyenas fear that Jin is about to get ripped to shreds, but he keeps insisting that Yena is a chick because the male hyenas look totally different. After storming out, Yena heads to the cooking club and starts sniffing Hino until Jin shows up and tells him to go back to his pack of delirious hyena chicks. Yena refuses and says he has to prove his masculinity to Jin, but he gets treated like a boring sideshow by Jin. Frustrated, Yena crushes a tomato to show off his strength, but Yukari does the same to a watermelon, which immediately humbles Yena. However, he starts making fun of Jin for acting like a housewife. After he chews on a large bone like it's gum, Jin says it doesn't mean anything because female hyenas can do the same. This completely infuriates Yena, so he decides to go all out while the mole rats secretly record them and head back to the council office to tell Miki. After listening to them, she decides that Jin and his girls must be protected, even if they are all creeps. Then, she asks for the video, only to get shocked when they pull up live footage of Jin trying to stop Yena from pulling his pants down. While Miki's brain starts glitching from the shock, shock, Jin tells Yena to stop, but he refuses and insists that it's the only way to prove his masculinity. Then, he recalls how he was always bullied for his looks and went back home crying. His dad would then say that his face looked just like his mother, who was strong enough to defeat a lion on her own. This is why Yena became so obsessed with proving that he is a guy to everyone that has ever doubted him. After listening to all this, Jin says there is no point in exposing his banana because even female hyenas have them. Yena freezes in shock, so Jin further explains that although female hyenas can't use their pickles to crack, they have very similar ones to the guys. Yena then recalls every conversation she has had with female hyenas and realizes that she is actually a girl. After Hino assures her that being stupid is nothing to be embarrassed of, she runs off, but then Jin says she is strong enough to take care of herself. As Ranka starts messing with him again, Farrell admits that their pack is really nice, but she still gets pissed that Jin is making her little sister blush. After Yukari spots her obvious hiding spot, Ranka gets mad and tells her to leave already. Days later, Ranka gets excited for the upcoming field day, but everyone else dips with various excuses for why they don't want to play sports against some of the deadliest animals alive. Even Kurumi says she would rather take a nap, but as Ranka gets frustrated about it, Miyubi shows up and offers to do it with her. For starters, they head to one of the school tracks to practice the three-legged race, but after taking the very first step, Miyubi passes out. Just as Ranka helps her up, they get surrounded by Mickey's army of mole rats, because Miyubi's cakes just sent one of them to the afterlife. After apologizing, Ranka asks why they are even out here, so they explain how they work on all the tracks and fields in preparation for field day. This gives Ranka an idea, so she offers to help them along with Miyubi, since that should be a lot easier to do. However, after they give her the painting machine to start on the lines, she passes out again. This makes them realize that Miyubi will only slow them down, but Malio reminds them that they owe a debt to Ranka for saving them. The others agree, so they all start working around the clock while Ranka spends the entire time saving Miyubi from serious brain damage. Minutes later, Jin is following Hino and wondering if she suddenly called him because she finally wants to confess her feelings. However, she takes him to the tracks to watch as Ranka finally gets Miyubi to last until the end of the line. After she drops, the moles also finish with their work, so Ranka apologizes for making things difficult. Surprisingly, the moles say that they actually loved watching as Miyubi refused to give up. Then, Molio wishes her luck for the field day, while Jin realizes that they can't leave Ranka and Miyubi to compete by themselves. Days later, they all meet up for the competitions and get surprised when Mashima shows up. As always, she starts roasting Ranka until Jin reminds her that she is now a loner who follows creepy donkeys around. Crushed, Mashima claims that her new group is the best because she is now a master of some worthless donkey card game. She also promises to defeat them in the contest, but the girls explain that she can't because they need a team of 5. After Mashima runs off in embarrassment, Miyubi runs up to meet them, but they all get surprised and wonder how she suddenly became agile. Miyubi also says she has no idea, so Ranka says it must be all the training they did. The next moment, Miyubi passes out, so they rush her to the infirmary, where Kuwano explains that she caught a fever from all the training, which elevated her heart rate to a point that she could run. After he tells her to spend the rest of the day recovering, Miyubi refuses and says she wants to compete, but Ranka stops her and explains how important it is for her to recover. Much later, Mickey announces the start of the competitions, and for starters, Ranka heads to the track for the foot race. Jin worries that she might not fare well against the cheetah and horse, but as soon as the signal goes off, Ranka manages to keep up with them. However, they suddenly fall victim to banana peels, and a chimp named Pan steals the win. With help from the other chimps in her club, she continues dominating every contest and achieves an unbelievably high score. Minutes later, Jin is trying to have lunch with the girls, but Kurume suddenly shows up and steals all the food. After yelling at her, Jin spots Ranka sulking all alone, so he walks over to her and tells her to cheer up. Ranka refuses and reminds him that they don't have a single point. To make matters worse, Pan and her team of obnoxious chimps start mocking them, so Jin gets pissed and tells Ranka to get it together. After he tells her not to give up and reminds her that she is the pack leader, Ranka gets motivated again. Minutes later, the second race contest is announced, and Mashima ends up serving maps to the real athletes while her donkey bros yap about loving their useless team. Just then, Jin shows up and tells them to join the team so they can compete. However, the donkeys regret this as they drag themselves up a snowy mountain. Just as they are about to give up, Jin explains how King Napoleon successfully defeated his enemies because he used a donkey to tread the rough mountain terrain. Upon hearing this, the donkeys get active and speed right past the cheating chimps, securing the team's first win. Then, Jin tells Yukari to lock in for the arm wrestling match because she is up against a massive gorilla. The moment they get the signal, the loud furball starts yapping about having the most strength in the animal kingdom until Yukari smashes the table with his arm. Upon seeing this, the chimps get worried, and Pan agrees that they can't keep underestimating them. Minutes later, the girls are all at the pool and a little worried because Heno has to swim a long distance to secure the win. After telling them that she was on the swim team in her previous school, Hino says she has to do it because Jin is currently fighting death as he races across a desert with other animals. However, after she changes into a hot swimsuit, the chimps ambush her with a special mixture that knocks her out cold. Minutes later, Jin gets wheeled into the infirmary and gets surprised to see Hino there as well, but he also knows that he is just in a deep sleep. After Kuwano shows them the napkin they found. Yukari takes a whiff and realizes that it was intentional. Jin already knows that it was the chimps, but they need a substitute to take Hino's place as soon as possible. After Yukari falls asleep, Miyubi shows up and says she can do it right before passing out. Kuwano then agrees that she feels a lot better, but Jin remains skeptical about it. Moments later, all the competing animals get in the water, and the entire student body gets shocked when Jin carries Miyubi to the water as well. However, when the race starts, she actually manages to stay afloat, surprising everyone. Even Pan notices this, but then she zooms off of the boat and tries to drown Miyubi. Jin immediately tries to help, but she gets back up on her own and continues going. In seconds, the entire student body starts cheering, and Jin also decides to put his faith in her until she gets to the finish line. After Ranka pulls her out, she passes out, so Ranka immediately takes off to finish the last course of the race. As she speeds through the jungle, Pan notices and tries to zap her, but Ranka bites through the taser and threatens to chop her in half if she ever attacks one of the team. With Pan taken care of, Ranka bolts to the finish line and secures the win for the team. After they get their trophy, Ranka gets even more excited because everyone will finally recognize them as a pack. Then, Mashima's donkey bros tell her that Jin and the girls offered to let them use the club room as a thank you for all the help, and this makes Mashima emotional. Weeks later, the entire student body gathers at the entrance to celebrate the arrival of a new transfer student. Just a couple of days before this, they all took turns picking tasks they would do to prepare for the transfer student. While others got the easy job of decorating, Ranka ended up with the task of building a hot spring. However, Jin ended up doing all the work alone. Back in the present, they all cheer excitedly as a hot panda chick named Mei Mei walks out of her limo to greet them. Minutes later, she is in the headmaster's office, and after introductions, her manager, Feng Feng, explains that they will be observing the academy for 2 days to decide if she will actually transfer. Headmaster Amano accepts this and offers Mei Mei some bamboo leaves, but she starts screaming because it isn't the specific type she wants. As she threatens to leave, Feng Feng tells them to spend the school's entire budget to get the leaves she wants shipped over immediately. Minutes later, Miki introduces herself to Mei Mei and offers her a tour of the academy, but Mei Mei tells her to do something funny first. Confused, Miki hesitates, and Mei Mei immediately decides to leave, so Feng Feng begs her to put on some kind of act. Miki then asks her mole rat family for help, and after a little chit-chat, they all cover her entire body and rip her clothes off. Unfortunately, Feng Feng is the only one watching because Mei Mei just left to explore the academy on her own. Minutes later, Shishino is spying on Shiho and wishing he could hit that until Mei. Mei hits him with a pair of scissors and gets excited because she has never seen a lion in person. After saying that he totally wasn't stalking Shiho, he looks back, wanting to cut his hair again but changes his mind since Shiho isn't giving him the time of day. Mei Mei only hears the first part and chops his hair off before running away. Meanwhile, Yukari just made panda dumplings and explains how pandas are obsessed with them, but Jin doesn't get the hype. As they start talking about Mei Mei and wonder if she will actually stay in the academy, she shows up and starts munching on the dumplings, but they have no idea who she is because she is wearing Shishino's hair. As she grabs all their dumplings and eats them, Yukari gets pissed and almost turns her into actual panda dumplings, but the girls stop her. Then, Jin demands to know who she is, so Mei Mei takes off the disguise and explains how she followed the smell of the dumplings to find them. When she orders them to make more and says no one can ever say no to her, Jin loses it and tells her not to get ahead of herself. Shocked, Mei Mei tries to yell at him, but he returns the same energy and throws her out of the club room. Just then, Feng Feng finds her, but she is fuming because no one has ever treated her the way Jin just did. The next day, she shows up to class and asks Jin to make the dumplings again, but he tells her to forget about it right before Feng Feng shows up and introduces himself. He then explains that being rude to a panda is punishable by execution in their home country, but Jin tells him to zip it because nobody cares. While Feng Feng freezes in shock, the girls explain that they actually choose what to make in the club after voting on it every day. The very next day, Mei Mei and Feng Feng buy a very traditional dish for Yukari, and she immediately falls in love with pandas. Miyubi also gets a scooter and falls in love with them as well, before they both promise Ranka that Mei Mei's 1.3 billion fans will join her pack. By the time Jin shows up to the club room, the girls have all been bought by them and agree to make the dumplings Mei Mei has been asking for. Despite being upset, Jin accepts this, but says that Mei Mei has to help them make the dumplings. As soon as they start, she is already complaining, but Jin ignores this and makes her work even harder until she gets frustrated and slams the dough pan on the floor. Jin gets irritated by this and tells her to pick it up, but Feng Feng offers to do it instead. However, Jin gets even more upset and says that Mei Mei has to do it, so she drops to her knees and starts picking up the dough like a good little girl. Surprisingly, the once proud and boastful panda goes from running her mouth to obeying Jin's every wish, while he gets even more upset at her obnoxious behavior. After she finally makes the dumplings, he tells her to take a bite, and she realizes that it tastes even better than the one she had yesterday. Seeing this, Ranka asks if she wants to join the club, but Feng Feng immediately refuses because Jin will only continue to bully her every day. The next moment, Jin says he will never accept such a selfish, spoiled brat into the club. And when Mei Mei asks if she can do anything to change that, he says that she also has to get another club member, who is Kurumi, to accept her request. The next day, Mei Mei returns to school and actually enrolls this time before heading to Kurumi's class to meet her. After Kurumi gets startled, she hides under the table, and Jin and the rest of the gang show up to explain what's going on. Kurumi remains upset and stops Mei Mei from touching her, so Jin says that it will be better to prioritize Kurumi, who is obviously way more important to them than Mei Mei. The next moment, Mei Mei gets locked in a cage while Jin and the girls ask Kurumi if she's okay with Mei Mei joining the club. Ranka tries to explain that Mei Mei is really a good girl, but Kurumi completely closes herself off, making them realize that she doesn't even want to consider it. Hours later, Jin opens the cage and tells her to give up, but she refuses and insists on staying in the cage until Kurumi hears her. Even after Feng Feng begs her to reconsider, she decides to stay put, so they all head home while she stays in the cage until nightfall. Just as she starts getting frustrated, Kurumi shows up and quietly watches until Mei notices her green eyes and admits that they are beautiful. However, Kurumi still ignores her, so Mei admits that she has been a spoiled brat her entire life, but being with Jin and the rest of the girls made her realize that she can have a really good experience with them, so she wants Kurumi's approval at all costs. Hearing this makes Kurumi remember Ranka's dream to unite all the animal species, so she cracks a smile and runs off. The next morning, Mei wakes up and gets surprised to see a blanket and one of Miki's rats right next to her. After it runs off in fear, Jin and the rest of the gang show up and she tells them that Kurumi finally accepted her. She then says that the rat was proof, but they all think she has gone cuckoo from being all alone for the night. After Jin opens the cage, she continues insisting that Kurumi accepted her until Kurumi actually shows up and sniffs her before rubbing all over her shirt and running off without saying a single word. Mei gets surprised about what just happened, so Jin explains that it's her way of giving approval and showing love. With that out of the way, Ranka tells Mei to come slobber all over her as proof of being a new member, but Mei does it to Jin instead. Despite this, he barely reacts, which makes her completely lose it. Later that day, all the girls are in the hot spring he made, enjoying the warm water, while he falls victim to the cold and uses the blanket that he secretly used to cover Mei last night. Several days later, Yena is back at her family house having food with her dad and brother, who then ask how life in school has been since she accepted that she was a girl. Yena says that nothing has, however, when they commend her for doing her best to fit in despite not acting like a real girl, she gets crushed and realizes that she has no idea how to actually be a girl. The next day in school, she beats up a bunch of carnivores and starts to wonder who she can learn from to become the perfect girl. Then, as she rinses off at the tap, Hino shows up to give her a napkin and overwhelms her with so much feminine energy that Yena realizes that she is the perfect idol to learn from. Later that morning, Farrell secretly waits by the bushes while Ranka jumps into Jin, as usual, to slobber his face. When Kuromori asks why she won't just go and talk to her sister, Farrell reminds him that Ranka will chase her away if she finds out that they are still lurking around campus to watch her. Right then, a honey badger girl named Tell shows up and begs them to let her join the pack so she can serve them as a thank you for the time they saved her from a wild bear. After Farrell rejects her, Kuromori explains that they can't let her join the pack because she's obviously not a wolf, but then Tell points to Yena and asks why they left her alone. After walking up and asking her what she's doing, Yena explains that she's observing Hino to learn how to be a real woman. This makes the wolves confused because they only remember when she was so obsessed with being a guy. Then they explain to Tell that only one female is allowed in the pack, and Farrell says that the only girl she wants is Ranka. However, Tell misunderstands this and thinks she has to defeat Ranka to be able to join the pack, so she heads out and starts stalking Ranka. As the day progresses, Yena continues stalking Hino and tries her possible best to copy everything she does, but it all makes her look even more aggressive than she already is. When she finally tells Hino about her struggles, she suggests telling it to the rest of the gang by the cooking club so they can all help her out. Several minutes later, they are all in the club room, and after listening to what she has to say, Jin tells her to forget about ever looking or behaving like Hino because she is just not capable of such beauty and grace. While Yena tries to defend herself, Mei learns that she also has a pickle in her pants, so they all rip Yena's skirt open to get a peek at her goods. Then Yukari suggests making Hino act like Yena so she can see how different she looks to everyone else. However, after they all spend a couple minutes giving Hino a makeover, they only make her look like a smoking hot stripper. As Jin starts gushing and Yena drools over her, Tell walks in and begs Ranka to fight her, but Ranka refuses, and Yena immediately throws the clueless honey badger right out the door. Then Kuromori catches up to her and tries to explain why she shouldn't fight Ranka, but then Tell spots a honey-guide bird and immediately starts following it because it's good at finding honey, which she loves. While this is happening, Jin is still insisting that Yena can never become feminine like Hino, but she insists that she can. Over the following days, the girls make a combined effort effort to give her a makeover and continue teaching her everything about being a baddie until she actually starts acting like a girl. When she finally gets enough time to go back home and meet her folks, they also get surprised to see how different she's acting and lose their marbles when she explains how she became friends with Hino. Then, when she returns to school, Jin and the girls admit that she is finally looking the part. However, after Hino celebrates with her, Yena tells them to hold on because the final part of her digestion process is about to happen. Turns out all of those old, rusty bones hyenas love to eat never actually get digested, so they always have to throw them up. The moment Yena finally obeys the laws of nature, Jin loses it and says she can never be like Hino, and she also gets heartbroken as the realization hits hard. The next moment, Tell shows up again to fight, but the Mohawk ambassador picks her up and asks Yena why she is pretending to be a girl. They then threaten to beat Tell up if anyone makes a move, but surprisingly, Jin tells them to go ahead because they are all powerless to lions by nature. As the lions start the beatdown, the girls all get terrified and beg Jin to do something, but he remains still because he knows that honey badgers have titanium fur, which means Tell is perfectly fine under all that violence. When the lions eventually get tired of beating her up, Yena realizes that she has been deceiving herself. She finally accepts that she's just a girl with violent tendencies and takes her frustrations out on the shameless, balding lions. Then Tell starts begging Ranka for a fight again until Yena decides to take her on first. Tell accepts and immediately drops a fart bomb that fries Yena's nostrils. However, a sudden gust of wind pushes her gas bomb right into Jin and Ranka, knocking them both out immediately. The next moment, Ferial comes out of hiding and snatches Tell before slamming her into the ground and creating a massive crater in the process. While everyone else struggles to get back up, Tell gets excited because it's the first time she has ever felt pain. This makes Ferial realize that she can finally go all out on her, but as she tries to pull the little badger apart, Ranka hears about Tell's obsession with joining the pack and gets excited, thinking that Ferial already agreed to it. Ferial, who has always been desperate for her sister's validation, then agrees to let Tell join the pack. Days later, Yena returns home again and tells her dad and brother that she's back to being a guy before running off while they console themselves because they already spent their life savings buying her a bunch of dresses. The next day at lunch, Yena shows up and thanks Hino for all the help before playing around with her until Jin gets pissed. Several days later, the gang is on a bus with almost every other student in the academy. As always, Jin is irritated by all the noise and Ranka only makes it worse. When he eventually tells her to shut up, she refuses and says she can't contain her excitement because they are finally going into the academy's C branch. Much later, they finally arrive at the C branch, and the headmaster welcomes them before they take a tour of the facility and get amazed by all the underwater classrooms and fish students studying at the academy. Then they gather around a student named Kana, who also welcomes them before offering to put on a show in the water. As Kana dives in and starts making some ugly-looking spirals, everyone cheers for her, but just a few seconds later, she loses breath and gives up. Then, when they all start complaining about her stupid show, she gets embarrassed and swims away. Ranka starts feeling bad for her, but Jin gets pissed because he knows that she's already thinking of going to help. However, after taking a second to think and realizing that this is his chance to be alone with Hino, he convinces Ranka to go and help Kana, and Mei also takes off with her. Minutes later, the girls catch up to Kana and offer to help her become a swimming phenomenon. However, after Mei shows her a bunch of useless tricks, Kana says that it still won't be enough to get her as much recognition as the dolphin trio that dominates the swim team. Just as the girls ask why they won't let her, the leader of the dolphin trio named Ruka shows up. Around the same time, Jin is trying to figure out the best spot to take Hino, but after looking at the academy guide, he realizes that the distance is much too far for regular humans like them to walk to. Then Hino suggests going to see what Ranka is up to, and after the rest of the gang agrees with her, they take off running. Meanwhile, Ruka has just explained that Kana can never join her team because she is a plus-size beluga who can never keep up with their perfect swimming techniques. This makes Kana emotional, but she keeps smiling through the tears because it's the natural resting face for beluga whales. After Ruka swims off, Jin shows up with the girls and says that Kana only has to focus on the one thing that makes her special. They get confused, so he explains that beluga whales are known as the canary of the seas because they are really good at vocalizing and basically singing in the water. This makes them all excited, and Ranka suggests that they all form a synchronized swimming group so she can put on a performance that will finally gain Ruka's recognition. Jin gets pissed off by this because they are taking away his alone time with Hino, but just a few minutes later, when he sees them all in swimsuits, he gets excited and thanks Ranka for finally making herself useful. With that, the girls start swimming, but when it gets to Kana's turn, she blows out their eardrums with her horrible singing and almost sends Miyui to the afterlife. Later that night, Jin gets stuck in a room with two male giraffes, who apparently like cracking each other. However, one of them turns out to be a playboy who admits that he has feelings for another guy and runs off while his partner stays in the room, heartbroken. Minutes later, Jin is looking for a new place to spend the night when he runs into Ruka, the swim team captain, who drops to her knees and begs him to stop training Kana. As he wonders what suddenly came over her, her girls show up to help, and Jin realizes that she's using half her brain because dolphins actually use half of their brain every time they're asleep or awake. Ruka then explains that even if he helps Kana develop a singing talent, she can still never perform with them because dolphins and and belugas are not meant to do synchronized swimming together. After admitting that she doesn't like always having to reject Kana and wants her to give up on her own, Ruka falls asleep again and wakes up with the second half of her brain, which turns her into an obnoxious hater. The following night, Jin is in the men's bath, relaxing and accepting that Kana is a lost cause. But then the Playboy giraffe from before walks up to him and starts confessing his feelings. After his little sister explains how obsessed he is with Jin, the terrified protagonist takes off running to avoid that monster cucumber. Then he gets changed and heads to the training arena, where he sees Ranka with Kana and realizes that they have been training this entire time. As he gets pissed off by this, he hears Kana admitting that she still feels worthless and thinks this is all a waste of time. After showing her that her voice can get her the recognition she wants, Ranka explains how Jin brought their whole club together despite all their differences. As she continues praising him, Jin finally walks in and stops Ranka before telling Kana that she will never be good enough to steal the spotlight unless she starts using her melon. It's a special cavity in the head of beluga whales that allows them to channel their voice through melodic sounds. This makes Ranka excited again, so she offers to help Kana train, and after a little pep talk, she also gets excited. Several days later, it is finally time for the swim show, since it's the last day of the retreat. After a couple of performances, Ranka leads the team for their synchronized swim show, and while everyone cheers for them, Ruka and her girls laugh because they know that this is not good enough to steal the spotlight. However, as they try to leave, Kana finally shows up and steals every heart in attendance with her beautiful singing. Ruka also gets shocked but still refuses to accept that Kana is good enough. However, as she turns around to leave, Kana's singing activates the second half of her brain. After a lot of back and forth, Ruka merges with her second half and joins Kana in the ocean to deliver an electrifying performance that stuns everyone in attendance. Like that isn't enough, the other girls in the swim team jump in as well and admit that they couldn't stop themselves after hearing Kana's beautiful singing. Then Ruka acknowledges her talent and asks her to join the club so that they can make more beautiful performances together. Later that evening, Kana meets Jin and the girls to thank them for all the help since they will be leaving soon. After Ranka tells her to come to their campus sometime in the future to try their food, she asks Jin if he would like to come back, and he immediately says no. Then he heads to the beach to finally tell Hino about his feelings for her, but just as he is about to confess, the zesty giraffe returns, and Jin takes off running again. Several days later, Jin is about to carry Miyubi to the club room, since she's too slow to go on her own. But then the other girls also jump on his back, so he throws them all to the ground and tells them to take care of Miyubi on their own. After he leaves, Mei Mei notices that a weird chick named Manako has been staring at her, so she runs up to shake her and then asks if she is a fan. The next moment, Manako rapidly slams her head into a wall until she passes out. Much later in the club room, Jin hears about this and tells Mei Mei that it obviously happened because her personality is too much for a normie to handle. Also, he explains that Manako is actually a tarsier, and her kind usually like to unalive themselves whenever they are stressed. Afterwards, during a sports period, Mei Mei watches from the sidelines as all the other players get affected by her presence. Then she notices Miyubi, who has also been sitting on the sidelines because she can't move a muscle. After she admits that she would love to run around with someone one day, Mei Mei decides to make that dream come true and starts dragging her across the floor until she notices that Manako has been staring again. She once again tries to talk, but Manako gets overwhelmed and passes out yet again. Miyubi then explains that Manako probably got too excited to respond properly, so Mei Mei becomes obsessed with making her a friend just to prove to Jin that her personality is not that crazy. After several days of learning ways to get close to Manako, Mei Mei and Miyubi take her to the club room to meet the rest of the group. When Ranka tries to talk to her again, she gets overwhelmed. So the girls explain how they have to never look her in the eyes and always take it slow so she doesn't get overwhelmed and pass out. While Jin gets upset and asks why they even brought her over in the first place, Hino and the others gladly welcome Monaco and keep saying nice things about her until she gets enough strength to get back up and thank them for being so warm and welcoming. While all this is happening, Shishino is currently on a bench with Shiho, who notices that a scary typhoon is coming in. He suggests going inside, but then she inches closer and says that a storm is also brewing in her skirt. He gets shocked by this, so she pulls away and tries to apologize, but he grabs her by the arm and starts taking her towards a private bush so they can get it over with as quickly as possible. He even explains that lions don't take long, so she doesn't have to worry, but she stops him and says he has to meet her parents first. Meanwhile, Miki is in her underground office, thinking about something while her mole rats suggest heading upstairs, because the typhoon might flood their hideout. Just as she asks if she's no longer fit to become president, the room gets flooded with water as a typhoon sweeps in. Soon after this, all the students learn that they will be sharing rooms because all the underground dorms have been flooded. As they all head out of class, Jin gets furious because he does not want to share his room with any stinking furball. After Hino finds her new roommates and works things out with her, Jin heads up to his room and gets surprised to see Miki with her army of mole rats already waiting. She then explains the new situation and asks if he has ever considered becoming council president. He then takes a moment to think and realizes that becoming council president means he can finally create an academy utopia where only he and Hino will get the entire campus to themselves, while animals like Ranka will be forced to live in the woods. After Miki interrupts his delusion and calls him a nut job for thinking of that, he tells her to save the advice until she learns how to keep her clothes on. Miki also takes a moment to think and realizes that she isn't trying to see things from his perspective, so she reluctantly puts her clothes back on. The next moment, Jin hears some commotion outside, so he opens the door and finds an endless queue of students waiting to talk to Miki. Naturally, he gets frustrated and tells them all to get lost, but then Miki realizes that they still need her, so she turns his room into the new council office and spends the following hours carefully talking to every single one of them. Then she apologizes to Jin for taking up all his space and says that she doesn't understand why all the students still need her when she's struggling to accept interspecies relationships. Jin then tells her to take a look in the mirror because she is the #1 person who practices interspecies relationships by constantly taking care of every student regardless of what kind of animal they are. This makes Miki accept who she is, but as she starts ripping her clothes off again, Jin flips out and desperately tries to cover her until Ranka and the other girls show up. Minutes later, they are in one of the girls' rooms, and after they tell Miki to get comfortable, she asks if they can also strip along with her. They all agree and take off the plot covers, but after taking a look around at all the massive milkers, Mei Mei realizes how small she is and grabs onto Ranka to hide her flatboard chest. The next day, some mysterious savage girl named Anne rides into the academy, desperate to find a human. After a brief meeting with Amano and Kuwano, Anne receives permission to observe the students in the school and also hears about the cooking club where she can find Jin and Hino in case she wants to meet other humans. As she starts walking through the halls, she spots Jin carrying Ranka and running for their lives as an army of dogs and wolves chase after them and beg Ranka for a chance to go out with her. She then pulls out a spear from caveman times to stop the brain-dead furballs from attacking. Then she heads to the cooking club to meet everyone, and after all the introductions, Mei Mei notices that she doesn't have any horns or tail, so she asks what kind of animal she is. Upon noticing that she's human, they all get surprised, while Hino gets excited and says she has always wanted to meet another human girl in this school. She tells her about Ranka and Jin before they explain that Ranka couldn't make it because she's currently in heat, and just by walking around campus earlier this morning, she spread her pheromones everywhere, which is why every wolf and dog on campus is desperate for her kitty. While they keep talking, Jin is still running with Ranka, but then they see a mysterious hoof waving them over from a storage room, so he runs in there and shuts the door, thinking it's a safe place. The next moment, the zesty giraffe begins his freaky talk and confesses his love to Jin again, while his little sister cheers him on. Jin manages to escape again, but after running all the way back to Ranka's room, she suddenly turns her attention to him and pounces, ready to release all that tension on him. However, after she starts slobbering all over his face like she usually does, Jin smacks her away and starts ranting about how annoying she always is. This makes Ranka feel bad, so she asks Jin if he hates her, and he immediately says yes and asks how she doesn't know after all this time of him hating on animals. As she starts bawling her eyes out, Jin tells her to stay in the room and just walks out like he doesn't care. The next day in the club room, the girls prepare a bunch of meals and ask Anne to try them out as they are trying to decide what to do for the upcoming cultural festival. Just as they warn that it is a lot of food, she completely empties all the plates in a matter of seconds. Then Jin finally shows up, but when they ask him about Ranka, he starts acting weird, which makes everyone suspicious. However, with all the food gone and Mei Mei already passed out, he now suggests that they just clean up instead of doing more club activities. While washing the dishes, Jin continues acting weird and notices that Anne has been staring at him this entire time. Much later, he is on his way back to the dorm when she stops him and says she's very interested in him. After apologizing and saying that he's only obsessed with Hino, Jin leaves while she gets pissed that he misunderstood her intentions. Minutes later, she's outside trying to clean her bike when Hino shows up and asks to hang out. After she agrees, they head to the hot spring, and Hino starts asking a bunch of questions before apologizing and saying that she's just so excited to finally have another girl to talk to. While she continues talking, she stares at her melons and wonders how they grew so big before Hino asks what kind of food she likes. She then says that she only likes meat before suddenly panicking and passing out in the water. Much later, she's in Hino's room, stuffing her face with meat and commending Hino for realizing that she was hungry. Then Hino realizes that it's already late, so she suggests spending the night together. After they get tucked into bed, she asks why she's being so nice when they only met today, so Hino explains how she became friends with Ranka and everyone else in the club before saying that she also wants to be friends with her. With that said, Hino tries to get some shut-eye, but then Anne thinks it's the perfect time to investigate, so she grabs Hino's milkers and keeps squeezing to figure out how they are so perfect. Later at night, Ranka stops sulking in her bed and grabs Jin's jacket before taking a walk to clear her head. Then she spots a dog at the vending machine and hides, thinking he can still smell her pheromones. But after he walks off, she realizes that the heat season is over and finally sighs in relief. The next moment, she perceives fresh meat cooking and spots Anne preparing more dinner by the fire, so she joins her and starts talking about what Jin said to her earlier. She already knows who she is, so she tells Ranka to demand an explanation from Jin in the morning and break up with him if he still hates her. She also insists that humans are not to be trusted because they lie and they bring about the extinction of other animals, but Ranka refuses to believe this and says that Jin is different. The next day, Ranka meets Jin in the club room and demands to know why he hates her, while the rest of the gang hides behind the door, panicking about what's going to happen to their relationship. Ranka also asks if humans are liars, and after saying yes, Jin takes his jacket and tells her to stop taking everything she hears so seriously. Ranka remains clueless, so Hino explains that he doesn't actually hate her and didn't mean what he said. This makes her excited, so she pounces on Jin and slobbers all over his face before spotting Anne hiding by a tree and thanking her for all the help. They then invite her to spend the day together again, but she gets disappointed because her plans to split them up failed, so she grabs her bike and heads out. Later that night in a dark academy, Anne meets up with her team of endangered animals, and they all discuss their hatred for humanity before the boss shows up and tells her to make sure she gets rid of humans forever. Days later, the festival finally begins, and Anne shows up right on time to see as all the students display the insanity they have been bottling up all this time. While she makes her way inside, Jin starts cooking with the girls and fantasizes about all the good memories he's going to make with Hino as soon as he gets the chance. Just then, Yukari walks by with a radioactive container, which makes him more suspicious, but before that, he can ask. Anne shows up to help out with the festival plans. After Yena also shows up and grabs Hino, Anne gets jealous but keeps her violent, intrusive thoughts to herself. Minutes later, they open the restaurant and invite all the students for an all-you-can-eat buffet. As they get overwhelmed by orders and struggle to keep up, Yukari keeps a close eye on the radioactive material she brought in earlier. Eventually, they get done with serving everyone and return to the club room, where Ranka thanks everyone by slobbering all over their faces. After Jin tells the girls to clean up and prepare for tomorrow, Hino decides to go get vegetables from the gardening club, and Anne realizes that is the perfect chance to get some alone time with her. However, Yena has the exact same idea, so they both start arguing over who deserves to spend time with Hino until Ranka gets pissed and forces them to shake hands. Hino then asks Yena to help her check out some things at the cafeteria, while Anne gets to follow her to the gardening club. While all this is happening, the rest of Anne's teammates show up to the academy to begin their anti-humanity plan. However, after some girls from the school meet them and share some balloons, they all start arguing about stupid stuff. By then, Hino has just asked Anne to try getting along with Yena. After she pulls out a hairpin for Anne, she drops the wagon and says she started feeling a warm sensation after spending time with them. Hino immediately hugs her and explains that she is feeling the love and happiness of finally having a friend. However, Anne thinks Hino is only doing this because she thinks she is also human, so she knocks Hino out cold and places her in the wagon before Yena shows up to fight. Minutes later, Jin starts wondering why they are not back yet, so he and Ranka decide to go look for them. Shortly after this, the dolphin chick from Anne's group finds the rest of the gang and decide to try out Yukari's secret recipe just to get close enough to them. However, after taking a single bite of Yukari's sewer pudding, she falls in love and keeps stuffing her face because she doesn't even have a functioning nose to smell how nasty it is. Meanwhile, Jin is still trying to figure out what happened to the girls, but then he realizes that Hino must have discovered a secret attraction to him. He then fantasizes about the girls playing with each other's plots until he runs into Atlas, who immediately snatches him up and decides to end him right there because humanity caused the extinction of Barbary lions. Thankfully, Shishino shows up right on time to save Jin, but in his weakened state, Atlas easily overpowers him and calls him a disgrace to lions for siding with humanity and falling in love with an impala. After Atlas makes the mistake of knocking Shiho out, Shishino completely goes berserk and regrows his mane twofold before charging into Atlas. However, Atlas also channels all the anger from his hatred for humanity, but Jin stops them both to set the record straight. He explains that although history says Barbary lions went extinct a long time ago, they actually started growing in number in recent times and were just excluded because they like to stay hidden. Atlas gets excited to hear this, but then he gets knocked out and is forced to explain how they plan to bring about the extinction of humanity by attacking this festival. As Jin desperately tries to find his girl, Anne successfully defeats Yena again, but she gets back up and demands to know if Anne was lying this entire time while pretending to be Hino's friend. Anne attacks again, but this time Yena bites off the tip of a spear right before Ranka shows up and wants to know what's happening. Yena tries to explain that Anne is the bad guy, but Ranka refuses to believe this because she can smell what Anne is currently feeling, and it is nothing evil. The next moment, they all start hearing voices filled with hatred in their heads and watch in horror as Anne's boss reveals himself. Surprisingly, the supposedly terrifying boss turns out to be a fun-sized mammoth named Man. After Jin and the others show up, he takes a closer look at Anne and realizes how stupid he was because he never realized that she is a Neanderthal. However, as they all focus on Anne and Hino, who is still unconscious, Man gets pissed off and yells at them for ignoring her. As she gets closer and Shishino tells her to take a chill pill because she shouldn't be doing all that while being this tiny. The next moment, Man picks him up like a featherweight and throws him around before doing the same thing to the rest of them and proudly screaming about how she's going to bring the human extinction plan to reality. Upon hearing this, Ranka immediately jumps in front of Jin and challenges Man to a duel, but she refuses. Jin then grabs some of Shiho's marbles and pours them all over the floor because mammoths, just like elephants, hates when random objects get stuck in their foot. As she desperately tries to get rid of the marbles, Jin tells her to accept his terms because he has a lot more to throw around. After she accepts the deal, the ring gets set up while both teams enter separate tents to get ready. While getting ready, Man continues raging on about how humanity caused the extinction of her people and how she hates them them. And this reminds Anne of the first day they talked to each other at school. Man stared at her for hours, and when she finally got the chance to take a break up to the school rooftop, Man showed up to talk about their shared hatred for humanity, and that was how their team started. Back in the present, they all head out for the duel, but Farrell suddenly grabs Jin and asks why he would let Ranka take such a dangerous fight instead of asking her to do it. After Ranka says that she wants to do this herself, Jin tells Farrell to watch and respect her sister's decision. Moments later, the ref explains all the rules and says they only have 3 rounds to decide on a winner. Then the first round begins, and Ranka immediately starts running all over the ring to avoid Man, but she starts punching the ring floor, which stops Ranka in her tracks. As Man starts making her way closer to knock Ranka out, everyone tells her to dodge and starts screaming until she finally moves away right before Man destroys the side of the ring. However, after dodging another punch, Ranka falls on the ropes and gets yeeted straight into Man's skull of steel. Thankfully, the bell saves her, so she sits at the corner while Jin explains that she needs to act smart because Man obviously doesn't have enough stamina to keep up with her. Just before the second round, Anne tells Hino to stop thinking they can actually be friends, but Hino says she already knew that she was a Neanderthal before the kidnapping. When Anne asks why she kept being friendly, Hino says that what she is does not matter as long as they can be friends. Just then, the second round begins, and Ranka tries to follow Jin's advice, but Man starts making fun of her and saying that she doesn't have what it takes to be a real boss, so Ranka tries to fight her head on and gets her teeth knocked out. Luckily, she manages to get back up right before the bell goes off. This time, Jin tells her to throw in the towel because she's obviously going to lose the final round, but Ranka stops him and promises him that she can win this. He then realizes how committed she is and rubs her head for the very first time, which fills Ranka up with so much energy for the final match. As soon as the final match begins, Man goes on the offensive for the first time and quickly gets tired out, but when Ranka takes the opportunity to attack, Man sneakily counters with a deadly uppercut that sends Ranka flying out of the ring. However, at the very last second, everyone starts cheering, and Ranka gets right back into the ring. As they start fighting again, Anne tells Man to stop because they no longer have to fight against humanity, but when Man refuses and tries to fight again, Anne decides to end their friendship. Man gets heartbroken by this, and Ranka takes the opportunity to steal the win, but even after that, Hino helps Man get back up and explains that they never cared about being enemies. They all just want to coexist happily. Then Man finally realizes her mistake and apologizes for ending their friendship, and Anne asks if they can start a club together again. After an emotional reunion, they continue to enjoy the rest of the festival and head back to the cooking club to spend more time together before Anne takes Hino aside to apologize again for betraying her. Much later, Man says goodbye before their team heads back to the Darwin Academy, but just as Jin and the girls are heading back inside, they spot Shishino looking all bloodied and bruised. He then warns of an even greater danger about to befall the Academy. Will Jin ever get the chance to crack Hino, or will Ranka get the first taste of his magic wand? Comment next part to find out, and don't forget to leave a like and turn on post notifications after subscribing to make sure you never miss any of our videos.